Kicking off our Big Ten season previews with the reigning, defending national champions, the Michigan Wolverines. Dalton. First year, though, without Jim Harbaugh, because offensive coordinator Sharon Moore is now the head coach after Harbaugh took the job with the Los Angeles Chargers, went 15-0 last year, won the national championship like I mentioned before. And, Sharon Moore is kind of a little experienced as a head coach for Michigan as well, because he was a head coach for a few of their games, a few of their big games as well, against Penn State and Ohio State. Went 5-0 in his absence when Harbaugh was suspended, and they should have, Dalton, one of the best defenses in college football next year.
They may still have the best defense in college football, Max. When you look at superstars like Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant and Will Johnson and Josiah Stewart, now you get Jayshon Barham in the portal, and they lose Rod Moore to injury, which is unfortunate. But man, they stand a chance to win and compete in the Big Ten because it's at least a top three defense for me, and it may still be number one with all that star power that they have.
Dude, there's 6 defenders that made the top 10 of my positional rankings, which is nuts. You mentioned it, second best D-line in the country, 7th best linebacker unit in the country, and the 4th best secondary in the country in my rankings. So crazy. And then the other side of the ball is a lot of uncertainty on offense. That is by far the biggest weakness for this team. Michigan must replace a first-round quarterback in J.J. McCarthy, one of the program's greatest running backs ever in Blake Corum. Its top 6 offensive linemen. So not only the starting 5, but also their 6 offensive linemen. I believe Trenton Jones, he's also gone as well. And their top 2 wide receivers are gone. So you have a new quarterback, a new running back, your entire offensive line is brand new, and your top 2 receivers are gone. Now, they do have Colston Loveland, who's the best tight end in America, who we broke down in a video if you want to check it out. And they have Donovan Edwards, who was the cover athlete of EA College Football 25. Really talented running back. So they have a good running back and an unbelievable tight end. But other than that, man, the rest of this offense is a big question mark. And really, Dawn, there isn't a bigger question mark on the offense than under center and who the next quarterback is going to be.
Yeah, of all the quarterback situations, of all the Power 5 teams we're doing, this is probably the hardest one to get a read on, right? You just have this wide-open competition to replace J.J. McCarthy. You've got Alex Orji, who they used as a wildcat kind of guy last year, who can really run the ball, but the accuracy issues come up real, you can see them real quick when you're passing. You got 2 other guys competing in Davis Warren and Jack Tuttle, who have some experience or are more traditional passers, but they don't bring the athleticism that Orji does. So if you're going to base this team off of running the ball and maybe just dumping it to Loveland here and there, you're probably talking about Orji being the starter. But if he doesn't give them enough accuracy as a passer, especially from the pocket and on third down and things like that, we could see almost all of these guys play this year for Michigan. It is a wide open race that may not be decided until we get a few weeks into the season.
So tell me more about Orji then. Is this a guy that, because I think some Michigan fans are hoping that he turns into like a Jalen Milroe, right? Where Milroe, I was low on him entering the year last year because he did not look good in replacement of Bryce Young. What is the play style for Alex Orji? I know we have basically nothing as a passer to go off of besides the spring game. What should we know about Orji as he's kind of currently the favorite to take over that job right now?
I think much like the early impressions of Milroe, he's a strong and potentially dynamic runner who you can use, especially in the design game, who has a strong arm, right? You can see the velocity, you can see the distance he can put on the ball. He can make plays over the top and play action and things like that. It's just going to be a matter of if he can make the easier throws, the more accurate throws outside the numbers, things like that, just to create more space from teams putting 9-10 guys in the box all the time. But when you talk about read option game, design run game, even running between the tackles as a quarterback, he can do those things. It's clear. That's why they used him last year sometimes in a wildcat kind of formation. It would be him back there, even with Edwards already. So they have experience with that. But if you do have Orji in there, I think early on especially, you might not be expecting him to throw the ball more than maybe 15 times a game. And a lot of that's going to be out of play action and RPO looks. So he's not, he's very, very unproven as a drop back passer. But at 236 pounds, he should be able to support this running game somewhat. That's not going to go away. Look, last year, even with McCarthy there, they mostly won their big games running the football, and that won't change with Alex Orji at quarterback.
No, he is physically talented, and I watched the spring game as well, just kind of get a feel of who he is, and you can see, man, the ball flies off his hand. He's got a really good arm talent, really good arm strength, and obviously an unbelievable runner as well, but just the accuracy was a little spotty in that spring game, and just he has 2 career dropbacks, right? So it's like we know nothing about him as a passer, so it's going to be really interesting to see how that quarterback battle kind of shakes out throughout the season. Let's highlight one of their star offensive player, which is pretty easily, in our opinion, Colston Loveland, the tight end who we consider to be the best tight end in college football. He was the fourth most valuable tight end in the country this past season, according to our wins above average metric, was fifth in the nation with 649 receiving yards. Elite athlete, man, at 6'5", 245 pounds, plays close to the 99th percentile in our game athleticism score. And that movement ability, man, makes him almost unguardable. He was open on 89% of his targets last year, which was the 95th percentile for FBS tight ends. Now, he's not a great run blocker right now. I do think he can get to the second level and take on linebackers and safeties, but if you want him as an inline guy, he's going to take on D linemen. That's where he gets tossed around a little bit. But just his receiving ability, his athleticism, I think this guy's the best tight end in the country by far. And Dalton, honestly, it's hard to say for this position considering how rare it is for them to go in the first round. I would be pretty surprised, though, if Colston Loveland is not a first-round pick in 2025.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think he's a step below Brock Bowers because Brock Bowers had such a generational career at Georgia. But there's no question to me. I'm with you. He moves different than every other tight end in the country. He's the best tight end in the country. And, moving over to the defensive side, Michigan's got a couple guys who could be considered the best at their position. But I'm going to spotlight Will Johnson here at corner, who, if healthy, is the best corner in the country, right? Last year, I would say Maxey played most of last year, about 80 or 85%. Had a right knee issue that you could clearly tell bothered him, especially cutting off of that right foot. It just was not always all the way there, and yet still had a very good season. And historically, for PFF grading, is an elite company, the sixth best overall grade combined as a freshman and sophomore, up there with names like Byron Murphy and Trent McDuffie and Derek Stingley. Like, this is the company he's in, and you get so few guys nowadays with how zone heavy defenses are, with the way offense is so spread out. It's always so. This is one of the very few guys that can play elite man-to-man coverage against elite receivers. He's seen Marvin Harrison. He's seen Rome Odunze. He's seen everything the Big Ten has to offer him. And if he's 100%, there's no reason not to think he's the best corner in the country. Michigan's secondary is spectacular all the way around, but Will Johnson's got the potential to be a top 10 pick.
Even more of it. I think he could be a top 5 pick, honestly. And Dylan, I wanted to shout this guy out right now because it's almost insulting that he's not getting a shout out. Mason Graham, of course. If he was on, I'm looking at my top defensive players in college football. I think if Mason Graham played for any of the other 133 teams in college football, he would get the spotlight here. Like, do you agree that you think Will Johnson and Mason Graham are the two best defensive players that we have in the country right now?
I think that's a pretty good argument. Yeah, James Pierce Jr. is the other guy that comes to mind there. Where you go, okay, that's the best pure just edge rusher in the country. Those three guys stand out for sure. I think that would be the one other name. But yeah, no, you're right. On any other team other than maybe Tennessee, yeah, Mason Graham would be the guy here. And I mean, anytime you want to talk Mason Graham, I'm all for it because that's a freak of nature. And I think down the line very soon in the NFL, he's going to be a top 10 defensive tackle.
So I actually was talking to Connor Rogers a little bit about him, and Connor's watching him for NFL Stock Exchange. They're doing the D Tackles episode next week. And he loves his tape, obviously, as anyone would watching him. And I broke down. I told Connor, I was like, dude, when I knew he was special, he got hurt. He missed a few games last year. And he hurt his hand. I think he broke his hand or tore a muscle, whatever. He had a club on his hand in that Minnesota game. Dalton, he was winning off of his hand usage against Minnesota with a club on his hand. That should not be possible for a guy with a club on his hand. This guy is a special player, man, and you said it before. I think it's a great call that he's probably the safest player in the draft next year. Again, it's hard, like Colston Loveland, it's hard to say, oh, he's a guaranteed first rounder. It's hard to say a guaranteed top 10 pick for a D tackle, but I'd be shocked if he's not a top 10 pick, right? I think Mason Graham is truly going to be one of the special D tackles, like a Quinnen Williams or a Jalen Carter that we had coming out in recent years. He's going to be on that level, I think. So he's a guy that definitely deserves a shout out. Even though he's not the defensive player spotlight in this, it's really only because you got, two guys who are arguably top 5 players in college football. So it's hard to pick between the two of them. But all right, bottom line time now, Dalton. Is Michigan's defense, is it good enough that they still are a national title contender? This is a team that has made 3 straight playoff appearances. This team has won 3 straight Big Ten championships. Are they going to continue that to 4 straight in the post-Jim Harbaugh era, or are the questions offensively too much for them to overcome this year?
I think the questions offensively take them out of national title contention. I don't think they'll be the best team in the country, but I think their defense is good enough to have a shot at making the playoff. I think when you're looking at the Big Ten, we think about Ohio State and Oregon probably as the top 2, but I think it's still realistic to think that Michigan could be the 3rd best team in the Big Ten, right? I mean, their defense alone is probably going to win them 9 games. Just defensively. Even if their offense just cannot figure it out, I would bet they're going to win probably 9 low-scoring games. You just look at the big games, though, right? You look at they have to play Texas out of conference. Obviously, the Ohio State game, I believe. Are they playing Penn State again this year?
No, they avoid them. But they play Oregon. They play Oregon, though.
They do play Oregon. So, I mean, you sit there and you go, if they were to win one of those 3 games, get to 10-2 with 2 big-time losses, let's say, you could still see them making the playoffs as like the 10th or 11th team. Absolutely. I wouldn't put them in the national title debate. We don't know anything about their quarterback. We don't know anything about their offensive line. It is so hard when you don't have those 2 things settled to compete at the very top. But I think it's entirely possible that we could see them in the top 12 by the end of the season. And we'll see if they can find themselves beating Ohio State or Oregon. And I'm sure there'll be plenty of controversy in Columbus if they beat Ohio State this year. But I think they should still see themselves on their defense alone as possibly a playoff contender.
Yeah, this is one of the, according to our power rankings, this is the 4th hardest schedule that we have in college football. They have a brutal schedule, man. We mentioned Texas at home. They are home against USC. They are at Washington. Of course, Washington's going to take a big downturn this year, but still as an interesting game. Home against Oregon. They got Indiana on the road. When Indiana's going to be interesting, they should still win that game. But Ohio State too. So you play Oregon, Ohio State, and Texas as arguably 3 top 5 teams in the country, right? So that's tough. So it sounds weird, Dalton, because this is a team that's made 3 straight playoffs in a 4-team era. So you're saying they're not going to make one in a 12-team era now? I think I am putting together my playoff predictions right now. I don't know if I'm going to have Michigan in the top 12, honestly, because I think there's a chance they lose all 3 of those games. And if they do that, I don't think they're going to get in as a 9-3 team, right, into the Big Ten. So out of the Big Ten. So it's a little questionable. Now they do have a defense that's still a national championship caliber defense, even with the losses they had. But this offense is going to have to answer many, many questions. Unfortunately, Sharon Moore is a terrific offensive coach, but we'll see how he handles being the full-time head coach for the Michigan Wolverines. But once again, we're doing this for every single one of the Power 4 teams, previewing their season, all 70 of them heading into 2024. So make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any single one of them.